Okay, so we're going to continue on with David Wood's opening statements in his debate about was Muhammad a true prophet of God. I'll post a link in the description section to part one so you can get caught up to speed. We continue on now that after David Wood ignorantly bashes how Muhammad first reacted to him being a prophet, he then mentions the Satanic verses, and David Wood does this in such an ignorant way that it made me cringe when I was watching it. In fact, many people who actually believe that this is a realistic concept need to do their homework, and I'm talking about many Christian apologists who make the mistake in actually relying on this. Now, the thing is that I'll illustrate how David Wood is actually being a hypocrite here in this segment, and how he has a double standard even for his own sources. Now, I'll post links to Ikra Productions' video of the satanic, where he refutes the satanic verses, and I'll post several links that are in articles that refute it as well. Now, the thing is that he says that Ibn Ishaq is the earliest biography of the Prophet Muhammad. That's not true. All right, this is actually a fallacy and a false belief that many Christian apologists throw out at Muslims. Well, I have a copy of Ibn Ishaq right here. They say, oh, Ibn Ishaq, this is the earliest biography. This is the earliest account of the life of Muhammad. That's not true. I have here a book called the Atlas of the Prophet's Biography. And in this book, near the end, they talk about the authentic traditions, hadith collections, and also they talk about the historians who chronicled the Prophet's life. And there are actually three different groupings of biographers of the Prophet Muhammad, whether they're extremely authentic, not so authentic, and very weak. And there are various levels even within these three groups. I will read off the first three people who are considered the closest historians. It says the historians of the first rank of writers for Sirah and Maghazi, which is the campaigns of the Prophet, include Abin ibn Uthman ibn Affan, who was the first one to write the campaigns of the Prophet, and also was one of the scholars of Ahadith and Fiqh. He is trustworthy. Urwa ibn al-Zabari, one of the seven fuqaha of al-Medina, he transmitted hadith and narrated reports from the senior Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, and Ibn Hisham, Ibn Shahab, and Azari reported from him. Wahab ibn Munabib was one of the best of the successors of the companions and is considered trustworthy. So we have these three individuals who knew companions of the Prophet and essentially wrote biographies and wrote of the campaigns of the Prophet Muhammad. So when David Wood and other Christian apologists like him say that Ibn Ishaq was the earliest source material we have for the life of the Muhammad, that is a lie. That's a lie. In fact, Ibn Ishaq, if you want to know where he rests in the eyes of Muslim scholars, he's in the third category. He's in the weakest category. And in fact, Ibn Hisham, who came after him, his biography is considered more authentic and trustworthy than Ibn Ishaq. So, with that in mind, how can David Wood stand there and say that he is quoting the earliest source? He's not. Now, he goes on to say that that many people say that the chain of narrations is authentic. He says that he talks about the historical method of trying to deduce, the historians use to deduce certain historical concepts and stories, and they say that that some historians wonder why do people write embarrassing stories about people who they think is beloved, or in other words, why would someone like Waqidi, who is the source of this chain of transmission, why would Waqidi create this story that says that Muhammad thought that a revelation was from Gabriel, but rather it ended up being from Satan? Why would he do that if he loved the Prophet? Well, first off, David Wood assumes that this is an embarrassing story. Actually, if you read the whole story, Gabriel does come and says to Muhammad, "Hey, I didn't bring you this. This is from Satan, so we're gonna have to correct this." This shows that God corrected what Satan tried to put into the Quran, and so therefore the promise that God would protect the Quran was true. It is true. And so I don't think Wakadi thought that this was an embarrassing story, as much as David Wood tries to spin it that way. But what do scholars say about Wakadi? They say that he was a liar. They say that he was weak in the transmission of hadiths and that he fabricated hadiths. And the top scholars of Islam rejected anything that came from him. So if David Wood brings modern people, he mentioned someone from Harvard who did their thesis on the Satanic verses. If he says that they quote certain other scholars, that's fine. But you know what? The classical scholars, the top scholars of Islam, say that he was a fabricator and a liar. So he then goes, and he really doesn't quote anything from those sources anyway. He just sort of says it as happenstance. He then says that, Ibn Asaq used a method to deduce whether something was authentic or not. That's also a lie, Mr. Wood. Both Ibn Asaq and Tabari both admitted that they were basically writing down anything they heard. And actually, when you look at the chain of transmission in the life of Muhammad, or the Sirah of Ibn Asaq, you find that Ibn Asaq doesn't even give the full chain of narrators. He leaves out about half the narration, which Waqidi, who was a contemporary of his, is at the head of that chain of transmission. And as I just said, Waqidi was a liar and fabricator, according to the scholars of Islam. Also, some scholars thought that even Ibn Asaq was not a trustworthy source, and I'll cite sources for that as well. He then says that Muhammad was influenced by black magic, and there are stories of this in Sahih Bukhari. Again, the stories there are variations in the stories. They are not as clear cut as David Wood brings them up to be, and in fact, we know that the Prophet quickly found out what was going on with him. Apparently, according to some narrations, he thought he had done something, but he hadn't. And then he was told by God and by Gabriel exactly who it was that was trying to mess with him with black magic, and come to find out that they stopped this, and then it was lifted from him. Now, David Wood here is being a hypocrite because he forgets that even Solomon was put under a curse, and that there were curses put on some of the prophets, even in the New Testament, or excuse me, in the Hebrew Scriptures. So here he is being a hypocrite again, and things of this nature. Now, what's interesting is that he's also being a hypocrite because he spends a lot of time talking about how Muslims are trying to find Muhammad in the Hebrew Scriptures. Well, you know what? Christians do the same thing. They try and find Jesus in the Hebrew Scriptures. So now what you're trying to say is that you have an exclusive right to going through the Old Testament trying to find your Messiah, your God incarnate, yet Muslims can't do that. That is a double standard, and that is hypocrisy. Also, I love it how you mention context. Wow. You crack me up, Mr. Wood. You say, well, we have to look at the context. Funny. Do you look at the context when you find what you call messianic prophecies? I highly doubt it, because if you did, you find that they were not talking about Jesus or the Messiah at all, but yet you think that they're authentic. Wow, thanks for your double standard. He then basically puts down the idea that, Muhammad said don't believe in fortune tellers, yet he tries to say that means that Muhammad was saying that you cannot rely on prophesizing future events as being a prophet. No, he didn't. Muhammad never said that. That's you interpolating your own words into what Muhammad said. He said, do not trust the fortune tellers. He didn't say that prophesizing the future was not a article of being a prophet. That's your words, Mr. Wood. You then say that Abdullah Yusuf Ali, again, you're cherry picking your sources. You say, well, Abdullah Yusuf Ali didn't agree with some of the scientific miracles that are in the Quran, or he didn't interpret some of these verses as being scientific. Well, you're only picking to use one translator in one set of commentary, not any of the others. And second off, you make fun of several of the scientific verses that are in the Quran, yet you don't even pick out some of the most prominent scientific verses. You just cherry pick some of the ones that you knew you could refute, not the ones about embryology or things of this nature. I love how you avoided the ones that are actually very, very hard to disprove, and only went with some of the little minor ones which aren't even in the books by Dr. Zakir Naik, or the book called The Quran, The Unchallengeable Miracle. I love how you just sort of avoided that and cherry picked the ones you wanted to refute without tackling the other ones. So therefore, everyone, this is the end of this two-part video. Thank you for watching. I'll post all the sources in the description area. I will also post a link back to the first video so you can get up to speed. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Peace be with you all.